I'd like to introduce Meg Slotkin to speak, and thank you for your attention.
Bonjour mes amis. Bonjour madame. Okay. Hi. Last spring, when Ms. Verona and I chose the date for my Tuesday talk centered on my experiences related to the Me Too movement, there was no way we could have predicted where we would find ourselves as a country at the beginning of October 2018. It may feel like the Me Too movement started only last year, but it turns out that the term was first appeared on the MySpace social network. You're probably too young to have even heard of that. It was used by a social activist and community organizer named Tarana Burke. In 2006, when a young teen shared with Miss Burke a story of sexual assault, she could think of nothing to say but, "Me too." The goal of Miss Burke's work since then has been empowerment through empathy. Empowerment through empathy. To ensure that survivors of sexual assault, particularly young women of color from low wealth communities, know that they are not alone during these incidents and after. In October 2017, a year ago, the news broke about allegations of a decades-long pattern of sexual harassment and sexual assault against film producer Harvey Weinstein. To this day, more than 80 people have come forward with accusations against Mr. Weinstein. On October 15th, 2017, actress Alyssa Milano reacted to the Weinstein news and encouraged spreading the hashtag #MeToo in order to draw attention to sexual assault and harassment. According to Wikipedia, yes, I'm quoting Wikipedia, the phrase "Me Too" was tweeted by Milano around noon on October 15th, 2017, and had been used more than 200,000 times by the end of the day. It had been tweeted more than 500,000 times by the next day. On Facebook, the hashtag was used by more than 4.7 million people in 12 million posts in the first 24 hours. Facebook reported that 45% of users in the United States had a friend who had posted the term. End quote from Wikipedia. Since then, allegations of sexual assault and harassment have been made in the context of the Me Too movement against many other well-known public figures, and you can probably guess them or name them in your head. So back in the spring with Ms. Verone, I figured I would introduce my own Me Too story for my Tuesday talk using the iceberg metaphor that many of you have seen here at the upper school, probably at the middle school, and possibly at your other schools, depending on where you've come from. The visual reminds us that while people around us may know some things about us, there's much that each of us keeps private, keeps under the water, sharing only with close friends, family, or perhaps not sharing at all. I would have probably talked about my story and pulled out some life lessons like be kind to one another, because you never know what might be hiding under each person's iceberg. What might seem like a casual remark or innocent joke could be very hurtful to someone else with a hidden story, with a hidden vulnerability. Or I might have focused my talk on some of the little aggressions that I've seen here at school. The simple push by one student of another into a locker, the judging or name calling, all delivered with a big smile or chuckle because I'm only joking. I think I would have pointed out that these are not harmless interactions. We stop hearing how hurtful they are, and people who are the regular target of these little jabs get used to them. It's a slippery slope, but she's so dumb can slide to she's so ugly to she's worthless, and so on. We all know how destructive that kind of thinking can be. So my message then would have been, stop. Just stop. Be kind as you would want others to be kind to you. But it has been a particularly extraordinary couple of weeks in our country, especially as relates to the issues targeted by the Me Too movement. Much of our national conversation has focused on the nomination of Brett Kavanaugh to the Supreme Court and the testimony of Christine Blasey Ford about alleged events from his past involving drinking and sexual assaults. This is a big deal for our nation. But wow, it's an even bigger deal for the individual people involved. For them, this isn't political. It's deeply personal. It is happening to them. To each of them, it's their individual, unique story. This barrage of recent news reports and conversations have shaken me to my core because of my personal story. I was born in the 50s. I grew up in the freewheeling 60s and 70s, though I am too young to claim to be a true hippie. One of the changes that started to occur in the 60s was evolving attitudes about sexual freedom and gender roles. For example, when I was in a seventh grader in about 1968, the middle school dress code required skirts or dresses for female students. Even on the coldest days of the year, we were not allowed to wear pants because it wasn't ladylike, I guess. I'm not sure who challenged this regulation, but it did change, and in 8th grade, girls had a chance to widen our clothing options for school. My middle school curriculum at the time specified that boys would take wood or metal shop, or a course in drafting, and the girls studied cooking and sewing. Really, I made this cool neon blue and green full jumpsuit with cutouts on the side. Not this, but it's not far off. My younger sister, year behind me, hated sewing. It made her nauseated to hold a needle. But she was fascinated with the drafting course. I am truly proud to report that my father challenged the school rule, and my sister was the first female to take the middle school drafting course. Attitudes were changing. Our middle school was overcrowded, the post-war baby boom. So, to make it easier for students to get through the hallways and change classes, some of us were chosen to be door holders. We would get out of class 2 minutes early, pretty nice perk, and lean against a hallway door so that it stayed open and students could move more quickly through the halls. Right? I just stood there. One day, as a boy was walking past me, he reached out and grabbed one of my breasts. Just like that. Just grabbed, squeezed. He laughed and kept going. I was horrified. I felt dirty, I felt attacked, but most of all, as any normal middle school student, I was embarrassed. I couldn't pretend that it hadn't happened because others saw it happen. So I screwed up my courage and I reported the incident. Do you know what the reaction was? I was counseled to stop doing the door holder job so that the boys wouldn't be tempted to do it again. The summer around 9th grade, I was swimming in the town pool. Of course, I didn't have my glasses on because I can't lose them in the pool. And I didn't notice that a group of boys had surrounded me. On some secret signal, they all moved in toward me and grabbed any part of my body they could reach and squeezed. Several boys, all at once. I don't remember how I escaped from that. I don't remember what time of day it was, but I have vivid memories of which bathing suit I was wearing, where in the pool it had happened, toward which side of the pool I was facing. That time, what was my reaction? I didn't report it. I couldn't identify who the attackers were, but I basically stayed out of the pool for the rest of that summer. By high school, I was already a passionate student of la plus belle langue du monde. Come on, la plus belle langue du monde, voilà. And I managed to save enough of my babysitting money to spend 6 weeks on a teen trip to France between my junior and senior years of high school. Riding in a crowded Paris metro train one day, a man reached his hand under my skirt, slid it up my thigh, feeling around. My reaction, I was paralyzed. I couldn't move because of all the people squeezed in. I didn't shout, I just froze. Thank goodness our group got off the train at the next stop, and I don't remember telling the adult leader of my group. Maybe I did. I guess what I remember was I felt there was nothing else for me to do. I wonder what some of you are thinking. No big deal, not like you were violently attacked, like your life was in danger. No, but I felt violated, powerless, and with little opportunity to change the situation in the moment or going forward. Like perhaps what some of you may have seen or experienced yourselves at a summer job with a supervisor with wandering hands, or a weekend party where you get squished up into a corner against your will and can't get out, or walking along some crowded street and it's a little too much touching for you. You see, all of these interactions are about power, not sex, power. Someone trying to create or reinforce a relationship where one person has power over the other, physically or emotionally. In these incidents, no one had accosted me with a concrete weapon. No gun, no knife. They'd assaulted me with a part of their bodies. And I had been powerless to stop the infringement. I had been powerless to get the behavior to change going forward. Interestingly, and perhaps contrary to your stereotypes about the lustiness of French men and the dangers of New York City, I never had a problem with anyone at the French Embassy's press service where I worked, or during the 5 years that I lived in New York City. I married, had a couple of children, and thanks to Mr. Slotkin, I was fortunate to work at home taking care of them. It was work. I was home, but it was work. We bought a house, and life was good. It was in May, about 30 years ago. Mr. Slotkin had left for work. I was serving breakfast to my 2 children in the kitchen of our house. A man barged through the back door, robbed, and raped me down in the basement. Then he left, walking right by my children in the kitchen and out the back door. I know that such information can be really difficult to hear about a person you know. It can be scary and shocking to learn something so negative, and it can dig up some difficult feelings or trigger similar memories. Remember, we share a community, a safe and caring community here at MKA. If you need to talk, come see me. My office is across from 23. your advisor, Mr. Lewis, whose office is across from Math Lab, Mrs. Lowe in the nurse's office, near the Commons, or any other adult in our community who can help to make you feel heard and safe. I know you've heard the term sexual assault, but I'm aware that there are some misconceptions which can lead to distorted opinions about this crime. So I searched out a few basic facts to help us understand. Myth number 1. Most sexual assaults are committed by a stranger. The TV stereotype is a lone woman attacked in a dark alleyway in the middle of the night by a person following her or lurking in the shadows. In fact, about 1 in 5 American women, 1 in 5 American women, and 1 in 70 American men will have an incident of sexual violence at least once in their lifetime. 51% of females, American females, of rape reported being raped by an intimate partner, and 41% more by an acquaintance. You add it up. That's 90% by someone you know. In 8 out of 10 cases of rape, the victim knew the perpetrator. Myth. If you don't really want it, you'd fight back. There's a wide variety of reactions to a violent assault. Many try begging and pleading. Some scream and fight. I did. Some mentally just dissociate. They remove themselves from the situation. Others feel frozen and unable to act. In some cases, unable to move at all. It's hard to predict what someone will do in situations of extreme life or death danger. Myth. Traumatic experiences scramble your memory. You misremember what happened. So without getting too technical, but I did check with my daughter, the psychologist, the way our brains encode traumatic events is different from how you memorize, say, French irregular past participles. Because you do memorize those, right? Because the brain wants to be able to protect its human from a similar threat in the future, it floods our system with stress hormones, which allow us to hyper-focus on the details of the present, gathering information from all the senses, what we see, what we hear, what we smell, what we feel. And those details remain vivid for the rest of our lives. When our brain is overloaded on these danger details, it often has no room to register mundane facts, like the kind that might sound valid in a court of law. Myth. A real assault victim always reports the incident immediately. Some attacks are reported on the same day. I could find statistics anywhere from 30 to 47% reported on the same day. Some studies estimate that 2/3 of sexual assaults are never reported at all. 2/3. Some of the reasons for delaying or not reporting at all include fear of not being believed, self-blame, it was my fault, concerns about how the justice system will handle the incident, fear of reprisal, or the fact that the survivor considered the event just a private incident, especially between people who know each other. Some are financially dependent on the other person. Where would they go? The prevalence of completely false accusations is low, estimated between 2 and 8%, which is the same as for other federal felony crimes. So what was my reaction that time? Let's be clear, I had just been the victim of a physically violent attack where I didn't know if the man was gonna murder me or attack my children. He clearly knew where I lived. I didn't know if he'd been following me for a while planning the attack. I didn't know if he planned to come back. He had left. I hadn't seen his face clearly. I didn't know if it was someone I knew. I didn't know if I went to the police, would they criticize me, blame me somehow because I hadn't flipped the lock on the back door in the kitchen? Because I hadn't fought back more forcefully? Because I hadn't found the right words to reason with the attacker? Understanding and having felt all these fears, I could never judge another victim or survivor for not immediately speaking out. Blame her or him for staying silent, sorry. You do what you need to do to feel safe. Ooh, sorry. But that day, I chose to not stay silent. I was determined to fight back for myself, for my children, for all victims of sexual harassment and assault who had not been able to feel safe, had not felt they could come forward. I called the police, who connected my attack with a string of others. They worked with me and their law enforcement colleagues. And a couple of weeks later, the detectives brought me the news that my attacker, the rapist, had been arrested. To the best of my knowledge, he is still in New Jersey State Prison. So you can see why the last few weeks have been particularly difficult for me. I stay informed about national matters because I am very patriotic. I care deeply about our country, and I believe in its possibilities, despite its faults. But know that every news story that comes out of the Me Too movement and since then feels very personal, because it doesn't take much for me to relive those feelings of danger, violation, and powerlessness. To conclude, like any good teacher, right, I want to summarize my thoughts. First, be mindful that the little things you do or say to each other matter. The physical show of power in a shove in the hallway, or the emotional power play in a snide remark about somebody's clothes or nose or butt. Yes, I just said that in a voice. Because those little actions foster an environment that allows for bigger and bigger terrible things to happen. Like what happened to me, but also, as we have learned from the Me Too movement, to many, many others, including presumably people in this room. Secondly, remember that iceberg. What might seem funny or innocuous Innocuous. Is that an English class vocab word? It means casually unimportant. Use it in your next essay. Innocuous. What may seem funny or innocuous to you may strike sharply and deeply at someone with a hidden experience. Third, when you hear a story that involves an allegation of sexual assault or harassment, don't judge others who come forward. You weren't there. Well, you weren't there, presumably. And you must not second guess what she or he should have done before, during, or after the incident. What you need to do is listen, comfort, give your support, and offer to help get support that the person may need. Whether it's a day, or a week, or years later. Again, I want to remind you that MKA is a safe and caring community. If it weren't so, I wouldn't be up here opening myself up and telling such a personal story with you today. Maybe sharing such a story is exceptional, but the stories are not exceptional. If you need to talk, come see me, your advisor, Mr. Lewis, Mrs. Lowe, any other adult in the community. So what can you do? Well, many of us know that we want to reach out and help when you hear something like this. So what can you do? Well, I'll throw a plug in here for our new CSI this year called SAVE, whose mission is to educate about sexual violence, fundraise for organizations working to combat violence, and to advocate for legislative action with elected officials. The CSI meets in the dance room next to Ms. Hoppy's office. For more information, you can see me or the CSI founders, Haley Sorenza and Emily Talco. So what do I want you to take away this afternoon? Before you speak or act, think first and listen to yourself. Respect each other. Listen to each other. Really listen. Take care of each other. And believe that you can be the good in this world. Thank you for your attention. You are dismissed.